What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Hartness, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I'm on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today with me on the show is Matthias Lenssen, and we speak about using tape in facilitation, or in short, how to facilitape. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you don't have pen and paper at hand to take your own notes, scroll down to the show notes to download my free one-page summary. And now, lean back to be inspired. Matthias, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Several facilitators in my network reached out to me and said, Miriam, have you seen Matthias' work? Do you have him scheduled for the podcast already? So I think you're overdue with the concept of Facilitape.
Yes, quite a interesting year for me because I'm doing that kind of facilitating for over 10 years. And this year I started to reach out for other facilitators to do it. And yeah, it's quite a buzz. And there's a lot of pictures on LinkedIn. And that's also a reason why it works that good, because people like to share their pictures about it.
Yeah, the facilitating. And we'll get into the details of what that actually is in a minute, because I always start with the same question. It's kind of a ritual. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator? And do you?
Yes, now I do. And I guess I learned about the phrase facilitator when I met Johanna, one of my former co-founders of an innovation agency, because she's a very professional facilitator. And we also had a coach who is a facilitator. And that's when I learned about, what is a facilitator? But I'm doing it for longer. So I started to moderate workshops, I guess, in 2009.
And you just said that Johanna is a very professional facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes a facilitator professional or very professional?
She knows how to guide people through their topic in a way that has got good results and that makes the workshop very in a good flow.
Yes.
When I met her, she's very logic and systematic thinking. And when that met my creativity, we were a very good team to prepare and run workshops.
Yeah.
I hope she hears the podcast someday. So thanks, Johanna. Was a very good time.
Beautiful. And somehow the tape came into your life. So you did innovation work, innovation agency, you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can explain to the audience what facilitaping is. What is the role of tape in your work and how did you get to that?
Yeah, the whole story started when we were doing a World Cafe format. I guess it was 2014, about 15 maybe. And we had cardboards as sports which we could move around, but they looked quite boring. Brown cardboard, and they were pretty thick. So we had, and we came up with the idea, okay, let's just put around some colorful tape to make them look nicer. And that's when, a big love story started. And I began to use tape in workshops, and were very shy at the beginning, but more and more. And one day we had a lot of time in the preparation and we had a lot of tape left. And then we started to decorate the room. We started to decorate, how do you call a Feuerlöscher, fire
extinguisher.
Fire extinguisher, yes, with flames, for example. And since then I use tape as a very crucial tool in every workshop.
Interesting.
I do it in a very intuitive way, or I did it. And now this year, when I started to show people what I do and to train people how they can do it in their formats, I began to realize, okay, what's in there. So there's a lot of things I did very naturally. And now I become aware of what it's all about.
And I love that. And I can only imagine that inviting new people into the craft or the art then also brings their own creativity in and then expands even your toolbox or your perspective on it.
Sure. Every workshop I did this year extended our toolbox. Facilitape community toolbox.
Oh, beautiful.
Very, very nice. And I love the workshops because in the past, I did a lot of workshops with corporate teams, and every facilitator knows it. There are always some people who don't have the time or don't have the energy to run a workshop that day. And the facilitators in the Facilitape workshops, they are also always in a very good energy, and they want to learn it, and they are there for their own skills. And so it's always a very nice atmosphere, and it's a very cool network.
I can imagine, because the moment you bring something tangible, tactile into the space that you can touch and that has color, it brings another dynamic.
Yeah, and they all have experience in workshops, so you don't have to explain what is a check-in or something. It's very smooth. So.
And I would be curious about the development. So when I understand you correctly, in the beginning, the tape was a means to decorate the cardboard and a means to decorate the workshop space. Is it still decoration, or does it also serve a function, or even does the tape facilitate maybe parts of the flow, the process? The group.
Of course, it's so much more than just decoration. Decoration is a nice. It's a nice part of it. What I learned this year is that tape makes the room the third facilitator. So you can structure rooms. You can even let the room speak. The room can welcome the people who come to the workshop. You can use it in workshops as methodology, as team building, to create an atmosphere, to prototype, to use storytelling. So it's really multifunctional.
And now I'm curious. And maybe we don't have to go deeper into all of those, but I would be curious to hear, what do you mean when it becomes another facilitator? And then, so how do you use it in these, or welcome,
for example,
to welcome the participants?
Yeah, I also learned that this year in one of the last workshops. You can use tape to make the room your co-facilitator. For example, I would say I'm a very chaotic and creative person, so I can use tape to give the room more structure, or to remind me of important parts of the workshop, or to give the participants more guidance, more orientation about the workshop.
So the way how I imagine it is that you would maybe have a line on the floor that separates it into part 1 and part 2, or into the blue part and the red part.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples also on my website. And to begin, what I like the most is to welcome people, to do a little welcome, just welcome, tape welcome on the floor, and even a guide into the room from the floor. And then if I have one team in a workshop, then I like to tape the whole agenda on the wall and even work into the agenda. So from the welcome, that you have in German you say roter Faden. So it's
the red thread.
The red thread that leads to the check-in. Then you have a check-in box, or even a check-in methodology on the floor. For example, I like to do the triangle of common things. Maybe you can translate it like that. So just tape some triangles on the floor and say people, okay, 3 people for each triangle and find things you have in common with each of the people on the triangle, and then as a triangle as a whole. That's the check-in. And then, for example, if you then do a brainstorming, then I have a canvas at the wall where people can put their ideas on Post-its in the taped canvas. In one of my last workshops, I talked about creativity. So I taped the iceberg model on the wall, and then had to talk about creativity and had prepared paper that I can put on the iceberg to explain certain things. Yeah. And in my ideal Facilitape setting, the red, what did you call it? Thread goes through the whole room, and in the end there's a checkout, and it gives the room structure. And for me, it's a sort of playground I prepare also for myself. So if I like the room, I have more energy to run the workshop. And
what I hear, and that's beautiful, I'm getting excited by just hearing it. It's, on the one hand, the agenda becomes an immersive experience where you can literally walk through the agenda and the different points and be guided. So people who do need maybe a little bit more structure, would like to know what comes next, where this is going, they have the overview.
Yeah.
And thereby you don't need to explain it. So that's how I now understand what you mean with the room facilitates, co-facilitates.
And even in one of the last workshops, there was always the word embodiment. So you don't sit at tables and do methods. You use the room to walk around, and to also it does something with you when you have just the check-in and you move to a certain point where there is the check-in and there is your spot at the moment, right? Or you have a methodology at the room where there's a person. I taped maybe the shape of a person at the room, and people stand there and can use their body to get into certain states.
Okay, so to take a posture and thereby
for example,
change their state of mind.
Or become a persona in a design thinking workshop.
I love that. And so the embodiment part, because you're walking through the experience. And I can even imagine that when you said the tape also welcomes the participants, they come into the space and it's as if the tape shakes their hand and makes them curious. It's like, oh, look around you. Look on the floor. There's something for you. Look maybe to the wall. So suddenly you are kind of waking up their senses.
Yeah, and you can, if you have maybe a title for your workshop, let's say room for impossibilities. Then in the start of workshop, you can cross out the im and it becomes the room of possibilities. So that's a very nice way to make people curious when they enter the room. That's also a thing which I recognized. People don't know that kind of facilitation so much. So they are very surprised. And I never had a negative feedback from a participant that I don't like the tape or something like that. So it's always curiosity and surprise.
Yes, and I think there's also something that sparks a sense of care, because the tape hasn't been there. It's not that you project it on the wall. It's a craft, or it's an act of art.
Yeah, it's a little bit a pop-up art experience just for this day. Yeah, and that's also the sweet spot, because I would not say that I'm a tape artist. There are other people who can do amazing things with tape. They do whole facades of buildings or interior design or something like that. But I have the sweet spot in quickly setting a room up with tape.
Yeah, and it reminds me of graphic facilitators. So yes, they're usually very good artists, so they can draw.
Yeah.
And still they're not painters. It's not their main profession to draw, or for the beauty or the
absolutely.
Yes. the aesthetics of it. So I see the parallel there, that it's a tool for you as much as the graphic recording is a tool for them to capture what is happening in the room.
The nice thing with tape is that it's even easier than drawing. You have just straight lines.
That's what he says.
And no, I experienced it in a lot of workshops this year. So of course, if you have a designer, for example, I had one designer in one of the workshops. Greetings to Daniel from Quäntchen und Glück. And of course, for him, it was like a new pen.
Yes.
So he could draw on the wall with tape. But I also had a lot of people, who said, I'm very curious. I can't draw or something, but even they, had the experience that with tape, they can set up the room in a very nice way without too much practice.
Yes. I can imagine. So being a person who would also say about herself that she cannot draw, that's me. My stick figures look very bad even. I can imagine that the restriction through the tape, that we cannot have round shapes. So everything is a line, as you just said, gives us permission to be imperfect and maybe to think of, okay, what is the approximation?
To reduce.
Of the thing. Yeah.
You can use it in a very simple way. And the fact that you draw a line figure on the wall, a big one, makes it look cool. Even if it's only a line figure, for example.
And then I can imagine that it's through the small things that you make it suddenly funny or interesting. If you just add a few hair or blue eyes in the stick figure, then suddenly it becomes approachable.
And that's also something I like very much. When I have time left in preparation, I look for little surprises in the room where I can add a little tape to just make a little joke.
Yeah, I can see that.
For example, there was in the floor which we taped, that there was a cable hanging out from the roof, not the roof, from the ceiling. So it was what to do with this tape. It's senseless there, but then you can just point an arrow and say here free Wi-Fi, for example, and then an ugly tape. A cable, can be a joke.
Yes, and thereby keeps also the participants on their feet, and sparks this curiosity or this looking beyond, because everything they see kind of then feeds into the purpose of the workshop.
You can use it to highlight certain things in the room that are helpful for the workshop, but you can also draw the attention not in uglier parts of the room, because we all know it as facilitators. Often you don't know the room, and often they are not that perfect for the workshop. And then tape, just 2 rolls of colorful tape help a lot to make the room your playground.
I hear you. I had such a situation recently. So being in one big space, with not much color and not even enough wall space to put all the flip charts in. And then, just putting a little bit of tape to, okay, here we are standing, or I made a little fire so that we have something to stand around a fire.
Yeah.
And it makes people smile. And I realized that especially when we work in large rooms that don't invite creativity,
this morning in our LinkedIn alumni group, one of my participants posted a photo from a big traditional hotel room that looked with Kronleuchter, fancy lamps, and it really looked more like an old school wedding place than a room for a creative workshop. And then she asked, what can I do with this room? And then we brainstormed what we can do, and put down the blankets from the tables and put tape on the tables, and maybe add little colorful feet to the chairs, and making a big agenda at the wall.
Yeah.
So it just needs a little bit of tape, and you can do some magic. In some rooms, it feels like magic.
Totally, I can see that. And also to give direction and permission to participants, because, for instance, there might be a space then on the ground. Okay, if you need time off, just walk there, and everyone suddenly knows it. And you don't have to tell people where to go constantly, but the room facilitates it, the tape facilitates it.
Yeah, especially in formats where there are a lot of people involved, you don't have to explain everything to everybody. For example, you can just make a sign at the wall, okay, put your bags and everything you don't need for the workshop here. And then you have a certain area on the floor where they can put their bags. And I use the term room hygiene. Can you say that? Raumhygiene?
Yeah, why not?
So that that you don't have bags everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's not cool for the eyes and for the atmosphere, but people know where to put their bags. It's just a very simple thing.
Yes, because if we have clutter around, it distracts our attention, our presence, and the more we can remove the clutter, the better.
Yeah. So you can structure the room and guide participants through a workshop, and you can also change it during a workshop. You can add things very quickly when participants do a certain session where you don't need to moderate, for example. Then you can use tape to add the next step, for example, or to
you have to be very quick for that, right?
Yeah, you become quicker. That's always a question from the participants. How much time do I need to prepare a room? Because most of the times you have only 1 hour or maybe 2. And you have then to see what's most important for me. And like I said, you become quicker. So now for me, in an hour, I can do big rooms. But in the beginning, maybe you don't tape every word. Maybe you can also print out some words and put them on the wall. I also had developed a tape font. So I give that to my participants, and they can then, in a tape look, write words, print them out, and put them on the wall, and it fits through the whole
without breaking the design.
Look.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so hearing all of that, there are a couple of more technical or logistic questions that come to my mind. One is, I imagine that there's a specific tape that doesn't damage the wall so that you can actually wrap it off without having afterwards a huge renovation bill from your client.
Yeah. So that's the only mood breaker in the whole facilitating game. You need to check with facility management if you can do that in the room. Not every room is you can not do that in every room. Especially in older rooms, or when you do a workshop in a old castle or something, you need to check that. And in certain rooms, I don't use tape because I know then there will be damage at the wall. But on normal walls, mostly I like the walls with which you can divide rooms. You know, in big workshop rooms, you can add walls in between. And of course, on these walls, you can tape perfectly. I use a tape that sticks very good and that also good removable. So at home, I sometimes things are for a year at the wall, and when I tear it down, nothing happened. For the floor, I use a sticky one, but I have 2 main tapes I use. And this year, I also learned about a tape which has thinner lines, so I can do more outlines. And, I don't have to cut my main tape as I did before. And so I became faster because I have more different tape
variations
in thickness.
Expanding the toolbox. And what about waste? So I imagine, because you're doing it it is, as you say, it's pop-up art.
Yeah.
So you do it and then you take a picture and then you remove it.
Yeah. That's a big topic also for me, because it's, I want to be sustainable and not harm our planet. But unfortunately, there is not green tape on the market at the moment yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope there will be. There are green tapes, but they are not for facilitating because they are brown and boring, and so they are not usable for that kind of purpose. But I will use my taping influencer power to trigger the companies who produce tape to come up with a green tape. And there are certain aspects. For example, one of my participants recently wrote that she did not use that much flip chart paper. Mm-hmm. So instead of using flip chart paper, she had tape on the wall, and it was even less waste. The main tape I use is also paper tape. So it's only the color of the tape and the glue that is not very sustainable. I encourage my participants to use certain things not only once. So, for example, to make signs they can use in their regularly formats on thin and light wooden pieces. So you can recycle them for the next workshop. Yeah, I compensate a little bit. I spent a certain percentage of my income to good projects.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and one other argument is that workshops are a very expensive thing, right? Mm-hmm. And if you manage somehow to really make people aware in the room, so that the time which you use for traveling and also the emissions for traveling to come to a workshop. Yeah. When you raise awareness for the workshop and for the results of the workshops through tape, then it's also a kind of more sustainable event for me than if you travel and people are maybe not that there in the moment. It's kind of not that easy argument, but for me, it's also an argument.
Yeah, I can see the storyline that through coming back to the care. So you're preparing the workshop space in a way that it becomes this one-off opportunity, because it is almost like an exhibition. So it's a piece of art that was created for this workshop, and suddenly people are very aware of this one-off opportunity they're joining.
Mm-hmm. And I thought about this question a lot. So what can I do with tape waste after the workshop? And for my workshops, I collect the tape waste that mostly it's tape balls, little tape balls, colorful tape balls. And I tried to do some little tape monsters with my son. So I add some eyes and some feet, and then I have a little puppets made from tape rubbish. And maybe in the future, I will encourage people to send me their tape waste, and I maybe produce tape waste furniture.
Ooh.
So could be a nice thing. I don't know yet, but
this is interesting.
You see, I'm thinking about it, right?
Yes.
You can press tape to little cubes, so it becomes there's another use for it.
Yes.
And you can't do that with Post-its. Or maybe you can. I don't know.
I like the idea, although this might then take you away from the facilitation if you're only producing furniture afterwards. When you mentioned the tape monster, I was thinking of a takeaway for the participants. So what could be a little kind of reminder of the workshop? Okay, so what if at the end everyone has their own tape monster that they can put on their desk so that it smiles at them and reminds them of the outcomes of the workshop?
Yeah, that's a very nice idea. So I can give them a little set of Zahnstocher tooth
Toothpicks.
Toothpicks to create little figures that they can take as a token from the workshop to remind them.
Like that.
So there are a few ideas to also tackle the sustainability question.
Yeah. And to finish this part about the logistics, if someone wants to try it and get a little bit of tape to play around with it, where do you find it and what to pay attention to? Because I remember, so for this workshop, I then got quickly some tape. I never worked with it, but I thought I'd just try it out because I saw this space and I was inspired by your posts and then realized I do need to take your workshop to learn it.
Yeah. So the only tape.
What would you recommend someone?
Yeah, these two tapes I use. The one is they are both from a company in the USA. They're called Pro Tapes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an advertiser for them
yet.
I'm sad about it, but I don't manage to get in contact with somebody in charge. So the one tape is console tape or artist tape from Pro Tapes, and the other is Pro Gaff. So this is the more sticky one I only use for the floor.
And we can put the links in the show notes. So is it
there's in Germany there's only one online shop that really sells them, and I can't recommend other tapes. I would like to, because the tapes are pretty expensive. So one roll is about 16 euros. So it's an investment. It's an investment. It's a good investment, but it's an investment. Yeah, and there's only one shop that sells them.
Which then brings another question in mind. So what is the extra investment if you want to tape a workshop space? So let's say someone says, okay, I want to try it. But then I guess you add another hour for decoration, plus you add the material.
Yeah. Do you mean as a facilitator or for the customer?
For the facilitator first.
For the facilitator, I think with 3 or 4 rolls, so let's say 60 euros, you can do a lot of workshops.
Okay.
So if you don't use it too much, of course, a few weeks ago, I had a workshop where I brought the tape and said, okay, now the first exercise, please just decorate the room as you like. It's a very intuitive exercise, and they started somewhere and ran through the whole room. So of course, then a roll is pretty fast empty.
Yeah.
But for normal usage, it's not that big an investment. The time and the practice is more.
Yeah. So 3 rolls, this would then be something around 50 euros, $50.
Yeah, and you can do at least 3 or 4 workshops with it.
Which colors would you recommend then to start with? What are the 3 colors?
There are not too many colors. There are only 10 or 12 or something like that colors from this special tape. They have pretty much the original posted colors. Mm-hmm. So a pink, an orange, green, yellow, blue. If I had to choose, I would always use the pink tape, a black tape, and the blue tape.
Okay.
But you can also use it to color code certain exercises. For example, in the design thinking workshops, you have the 5 or 6 phases, and for the first phase you use the pink one, and for the second the green one, and then you can also use the green or pink post-it notes. People who like clarity, for them it's perfect.
Yeah, and structure, color codes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I totally get the role of tape beyond the decoration. It's awesome. And I wonder whether you also use tape with participants. So obviously you use them when you teach facilitating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But would you also have a workshop where the participants of the workshop use the tape?
Yeah. There's one thing you can always do is just put 2 rolls of tape in the corners for each team, for example, and then just say, okay, our first exercise is make your team space nicer. Use the tape to come up with a team logo. or a team sign and use it to make your corner look special. So it's a very good team building exercise in the beginning.
Yeah.
But you can also use it for certain methods like persona taping. So in the past, I prepared a very rough figure on the wall and then gave the participants the tape and said, okay, now you can make the persona your persona. And then people can, like you said before, add a little hair and add eyes and add accessories.
Mm-hmm.
That's also pretty easy because it's not a big obstacle for people to use it. Yeah, it's even easier than to say, okay, please draw it. Everyone is familiar with tape from preparing the painting of a room for example. So
I wish I was.
But there's also a good parallel. The better you prepare a room when you want to paint it, the better the result looks. And that's also for facilitating. The better you prepare a workshop room, the better the workshop.
Yes, for sure. I was thinking in the direction of, for instance, Lego serious play, where you ask participants to build something with their hand, to think with their hands, to represent an idea, and where you have all these artifacts. So can you ask them, or maybe you've done that, tape your vision, or what do your company values look like?
Yeah.
Can you tape them?
I did that not a lot of times in the past, but I did it. We used tape as a storytelling tool, for example, in vision workshops. So we prepared a little map on the floor, and the one half of the room was the now land. Mm-hmm. And people could tape, okay, what's happening in the now land? What are our aspects today? And then there was a river on the floor. And during the day, they built a bridge over the river with tape to enter the next land, and then to tape, okay, what's important for us in the future. And of course, now in workshops, in the Facilitape workshops, I have an exercise where people draw 3 cards which are part of an idea. So there's also always a who, for whom I'm building something, what, and the purpose. Mm-hmm. And then the exercise is to visualize that idea in the wall. So it's possible and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that could be very interesting for facilitators is you can prototype a workshop in the room. So if you have a very important workshop and you have the time to prepare it, and you can visit the room before, for example, right? You can use the tape to prototype the workshop and to see in the room what works. And during this preparation and prototyping, new ideas come in mind for the workshop. So it's also can trigger creativity for workshop concepts.
Yeah.
And in my case, when I have an idea what I will do at the day, but there are always new ideas when I enter the room, just because I can do them with a tape. So to give you an example, one idea that came up was in this creativity workshop where I taped the iceberg model on the wall. I also taped a little igloo on the iceberg, and then I added a white tape around some chairs, and the white tape represented the igloo. Mm-hmm. And so participants were sitting in the igloo, and I also had a little fire taped in the middle. So that was also a little storytelling aspect, and that idea that came in mind when I was preparing the workshop.
Yeah.
And in the room in the morning.
It's beautiful. It sounds like a really, embodied experience, an immersive experience where you think with your tape.
Yeah. Yeah. I use it as a very spontaneous creativity trigger when I prepare workshops.
How long does it take to learn that?
The most
not to be embarrassed anymore.
The most important aspects you can learn in one day. Mm-hmm. So, and I see people using it now. They visited or they participated in one of my workshops, and now I see them using it. And of course, the more you use it, the better you get. The better your feeling for rooms gets.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much to start. It's just start it. And then, for example, when you tape words, letters, you develop your own style and you develop, the shapes you like the most and you use a lot in your workshops. But my workshops are a little more than, a push in the direction to start with it.
I can imagine. And I guess you approach the selection of the workshop space in a very different way, because you might rather need space than a lot of wall space and space. Because if you're taping words,
for
suddenly
my
everything
workshops,
becomes supersized. Right?
In the past, I did not had very much influence on the workshop room. So I use then the room that I have.
Yeah.
And some rooms you can add more tape, and in some rooms you can just use it very reduced. For example, when you have a very modern creative room, you don't have to use that much tape, right? But in a very boring and maybe even ugly room, you can use tape. I have one participant, greetings to Michel from Switzerland, and he's doing a lot of formats with communities. So Behörden.
Public
sector. Yes, with city employees, and they have often very ugly rooms. But I'm always pleased when I see his pictures now using the tape to add color and to add structure and to make these even very boring rooms into creative spaces.
Which reminds me that very often, and I had the conversation with many facilitators on the podcast, how can we create just some change in our everyday routine? So they would have the workshop in the same meeting rooms as they have their weekly meetings. And then it's very difficult to get the group into a different mindset if they are surrounded by everything that is just the same. So with tape, you can create a new experience in a very known environment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also a thing which I want to explore a little bit more in the future, to work with internal communication, for example, to do internal campaigns in companies, because you can have pop-up messages about new values or new vision in the whole building. So there are endless possibilities in that direction.
And async workshops, right? So even if people are not there at the same time, but if you have the directions and the errors,
you can ask certain questions and just leave people adding notes there when they want to add notes. So beautiful. It's like you can do whiteboards, pop-up whiteboards in the whole building, like a mural board, but at a wall.
Yes, a real mural.
Yeah.
According to you, what makes a workshop fail?
When the facilitator is not in the right energy. So, for example, if I cannot make the room my playground, I guess I'm not a very good facilitator. So that's maybe one of the first things. And participants who have too much workload in the back of their heads. That's also a mood breaker.
Yeah, if you
and bad material. I hate bad material. So I always bring my materials, because I never want to work with old pens and glues that doesn't work anymore.
Sticky notes that fall off the wall because they purchased the cheap ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I hear that. And when you say that a facilitator who cannot make the room their playground, what I hear is also this creating a safe space for us. So how can we make the space, create a space for us where we can move freely and where we feel settled, ourselves authentic and safe?
Yeah. For me, tape helps a lot. I think there are a lot of facilitators who don't need tape to to make a safe space or to make a creative room or to create atmosphere or awareness. But for me, tape helps to do that.
Yeah. Do you use music?
I also use music. Of course, I love for example, the electro swing list on Spotify.
Yes. Yeah, brings good energy into the space.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of music because it's another way to really create an atmosphere and make everyone
tape,
feel well.
When you say that, tape is also a little bit like music. For example, you use different types of music in a workshop, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to have energy and creativeness, you use very energetic music, but you can also use very calm music in certain phases. And so it's with tape, you can even use it in a very, for example, in a, is it also called mediation in English? Mediation?
Yeah, mediation.
Mediation, yeah. So just, for example, just add a little line on the floor between the two people who need to talk. And maybe in the end, you can remove parts of the line to symbolize, okay, we came to an agreement, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's a very reduced and easy way to use tape. But you can also, of course, do the tape symphony and tape the whole room as a colorful pop-up art experience you can walk in, for example. Yeah. So you have, it's a good parallel to music.
Yeah. To really amplify different atmospheres.
Yeah, you can use it in a very reduced and clear way, and you can use it in a very creative,
beautiful,
inspiring way.
Yeah. My brain is just firing so many ideas, and I will put a link in the show notes to visit your website to see a few examples.
Yeah, of course.
I think this would be nice. What remains your number one facilitation challenge?
You mean besides from the reason why it could fail?
Yeah, personally,
what I need to learn, or
what you find difficult?
Difficult. I'm not a classical facilitator or trainer. I never learned it professionally. I never, for example, had a design thinking training in Potsdam. So my challenge is that when people are not interested in the workshop, or if they are difficult, then I do not have the motivation or the skills to bring them back in the workshop. So I then tend to ignore them or to ask them to leave. So difficult people are not a challenge for me. I want to solve.
Yeah.
So maybe that's my number one facilitation challenge, that I need to learn how to reintegrate difficult people, or to look behind their lack of motivation to,
Yeah, I hear you. And maybe it's a total different way of, or different focus of a facilitated workshop. Because I think
next week I have a workshop, and I know that there will be a participant who talks a lot and likes to talk. And that will be a challenge for me to give him enough space, but not let him conquer the whole workshop.
Yeah, and how to redirect. So I had Elsa Kramer on the podcast recently, and she had a beautiful strategy where she would give very specific tasks to these people who like to talk a lot and educate everyone else. So she would then match them with those who are maybe at a different stage, maybe rather beginner level, and then assign them to mentor someone else, so that you can acknowledge and appreciate their willingness to contribute and rechannel it in a way that it contributes actually the entire group, or maybe one person, without distracting everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's a real skill. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm very thankful, because I never get to know that much facilitators as this year. So I learn a lot from very experienced facilitators in every Facilitape workshop.
Yeah. And I think there are different workshops, there are different opportunities of why people come together. And if you design or if you attract those where people actually sign up, they are not volunteered by someone else. Everyone who is in the room wants to be there. And I think
that helps a lot.
It's absolutely okay to then seek these sessions if you know that it's not your cup of tea to convince people who don't want to be there.
Yeah.
I'm at the moment, and maybe this actually attaches beautifully to this topic, because at the moment I'm very curious about all these different facilitation signatures. So, because as facilitators, we do the same stuff, but we do it differently. And that's why we attract certain clients or certain groups. And for you, it's very clear that, or it's an assumption that clients would approach you because they want a facilitated workshop.
Nowadays, they don't know that yet. So they are surprised by it. But in the future, I guess there could be the question also from the customer side, do you also use tape? Yeah, I think there are not a lot of people who knows about it, that you can facilitate a workshop. But there are more and more, of course.
Is it something that you would discuss with a client beforehand? So your approach and what it means for the entire flow?
Not that much. I mention it, of course, because I need to see if it's possible. And sometimes I show a few pictures but people need to experience it. They can't see the value in it when they never saw it. That's the hard part, selling it. But as I mentioned, even if the client would say, no, I don't need it, I will not pay for it, I would use it because I need it. But it could become a thing. Maybe. I don't know. I just started it this year with professionalizing the whole facilitating philosophy.
I can see it become a thing. As I said, similar to the graphic recording, which is a thing. And some clients are willing to pay for it and others aren't. And I know that some facilitators always work with a visual recorder, and then it's just part of the pricing.
Yeah. What's also nice is when it looks good in a workshop and you do it at a corporate company, then you can also leave it for a few weeks.
Yeah. And then it's a nice reminder, similar to the tape monster. And I think there are some things that I wouldn't let the client decide whether they want it or not. So, for instance, I know that some facilitators charge separately for preparation, and then some clients argue that, oh, I don't need you to prepare, I won't pay for that. And then it's a very difficult point to start a negotiation. So personally, I wouldn't put the preparation into the offer because it's nothing that's negotiable. And I can imagine with the typing, it's then similar. It's just part of it.
In my experience, people are always curious. Yeah, they don't know it, but they can imagine that it could be cool. So there are not too many critical questions about it. Only the walls, of course, and you need to clarify if it's possible.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For giving us
to talk about it.
Yes, a glimpse into the world of facilitating. Yeah,
very
ahead of the curve. So where do your workshops take place? It's always in Germany, or do you also travel around?
I was in Austria this year once, and will be in Vienna in a few weeks. For next year, I will plan it a little bit differently. There won't be that much workshops. So at the moment, it's not fixed yet, but I will do one workshop in Munich, one in Cologne, one in Berlin, and one in the middle, maybe in Fulda, where Neuland has their buildings. The idea is to offer a 2 or 3 day workshop. First day would be for beginners. Second day for people who want to spice it up a little bit, to learn about specifics, specific tape styles, new ways to work with it. And if I add a third day, then it could be could go in an arty direction. So to also do a little bit of tape art.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's the idea. Besides the corporate workshops, there are a lot of corporates who want to do that at the moment, and then it's an internal workshop.
Okay, so teams wanting to learn to tape.
Yeah. I'm doing one workshop this year with the Bundeswehr.
Yeah, the army, the German army.
The German army, yeah. Never thought that they would tape, but they also have agile coaches, for example, or internal facilitators, and so
I would
doing
love
a workshop.
An introduction.
Yeah, can give you one.
Thank you. And okay, so then you're working with internal facilitators, not with teams, but with internal facilitators who would then use the technique for their internal workshops and their internal.
Yeah, but also teams who want to build their vision, for example, or to have a team building event.
Okay. Yes.
So there's also one workshop in Austria at the end of the year where a team will co-tape their vision on a big wall. So there are a lot of possibilities. I even don't know them all at the moment, but after our podcast, I will talk to a guy from a consulting agency, and he said, I'm not a facilitator, but maybe I can use tape in my consulting work. So
interesting.
New possibilities pops up every week.
Beautiful.
I need to see where the journey is heading next year.
Yeah,
but there will be open workshops, there will be conferences, and I will build on the community that we became this year. So at the end of the year, there will be about 100 people who came to my workshops, and we are sharing pictures and inspiring ourselves how to use tape.
Beautiful.
So it's a very living thing.
I can see that. And maybe you're going to come to Amsterdam. We have so many facilitators.
Yeah. Question. I would love to do an international in English. I didn't facilitate a Facilitape workshop in English yet. So if we can do one together in Amsterdam, I would love it.
Wonderful.
You just need a room. And I guess there will be a lot of people who are interested after your podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Let's discuss that.
Yeah.
I like the idea.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you for staying tuned and for listening until the very end. I hope that you found the inspiration and the wisdom that you are looking for. And I hope that you will subscribe to the show so that you never miss any of the interviews with another inspiring facilitator from across the world. I'm devoted to continue this podcast and to deliver weekly an episode that maintains the quality that you expect and you deserve. And if you would like to help me to maintain this quality and to keep the podcast free, please help us. Visit workshops.work/support to make a small donation to keep the podcast free. Thank you so much. I hope to be in your ears next week.